Felician is here, has been here, and today he's actually going to share his reflections on previous as well as ongoing work in multiple settings, and particularly on the issue of street vending. The full title of his presentation is Migration, Street Vending, and Social Protection, Insights and Reflections from Argentina, Spain, and the United States. And as I was saying, this includes work that he started almost a decade ago in Argentina, and he has been able to continue and cultivate his interest on migrant street vending, social protection issues, and regulation or regulatory efforts across actually 3 continents. That's right? It's the Americas, Europe, and actually Africa as well, if you think about the actors involved. And so without further ado, it is my pleasure again to welcome Felician. Take it away.
Thanks so much also to the Latin Institute that has been hosting this postdoc project since January, as well as the Fulbright Commission in Belgium and my colleagues at University of Liège, so Center for Ethnic Migration Studies, and the ERC-funded project MITSOPRO that supported my PhD years. So thanks for this. And so this presentation builds upon ongoing reflection on the presentations, policies, and practices shaping street vending from different ethnography that I've been conducting since 2015 in Argentina, Spain, and United States of America. Yeah, but this was a slide I wanted to share. So it's first of all a sort of biographical retrospective through my early career since its beginning in Argentina. It's also an opportunity to reflect on what actually bridges and divides these 3 different ethnographies. So we can see on the map some non-exhaustive examples of close people, but also of experiences of collective organization between the different case studies I've been working. So for instance, I've met Haitian and Senegalese street vendors, migrants in Argentina, who reached afterwards the US after taking a very long migration, irregular journey through the extremes of the continent until the US. Still in Argentina, I've met also a Senegalese migrant coming from the experience also of organizing in Spain. And finally, there was an ex-member of the Black Panther who traveled from the US to Spain, inspiring a street vendor union. So this presentation deals about this. Okay. Sorry about that. So the first ethnography I address is actually, so in Argentina, the nexus of relations and representations shaping Haitian migrants and the practice of street vending in the city of Córdoba. So this was my BA licenciatura thesis. Second and third ethnography focused on Senegalese migrants' experience in building unions, both in Barcelona and in Madrid, using also mobilizing arts, as well as the memory of deceased vendors. So these were my MA and PhD ethnographies. And the last but not least ongoing ethnography that I'm conducting here in LA deals with the regulation of street vending in California and more in particular in LA County. So these 3 different, actually 4 different ethnographies reveal different student and professional times, of course, but show some also similarities I'd like to share with you today. So it's an ongoing reflection. I would be happy to benefit also from your feedback and the discussions after the presentation. So you've seen a slide about structure, so maybe let's move to street vending. So street vending. So we could characterize maybe street vending as a way, as a phenomenon responding to a demand of cheap goods and food in commercial and touristy areas. So street vending is all about micro entrepreneurship, complementary work, but also survival, helping many undocumented migrants, providing social protection for their kids and kin. So for those also who attended to Peggy Levitt's fascinating talk recently, we can see that social protection is not just about securing access to healthcare, to pension, social insurance, social assistance, and family benefits, but it's also about securing a living, a job, and education. And my PhD thesis showed that it's also about securing further family and community needs, such as funeral rituals. So we can see also that street vendors, as they are often entailed by multifaceted illegalism, they're often targeted for the irregular migration status, for selling irregular goods in unauthorized places. So in consequence, we can see that they endure discriminatory treatments, as well as being subject to fines, arrests, deportation, violence, and sometimes also death. So street vending, and it's practiced by migrants, represent also a significant part of the economy in the urban centers of the global south, while in the global north, we can see that street vending has taken also an increasing visibility. Meanwhile, also underpinning urban public conflicts and public debates around authorities' reactions, right? So criminalization, tolerance, or legalization. So my point is that this context and need for social and legal protection is a strong driver for bottom-up political organization. So often lacking also to legal and conventional channels for political participation, some undocumented migrants movement nevertheless had a growing influence. So this presentation builds out that practices, representations, and social political organization, but also an implementation gap in street vending policy regulation. So let's start with Argentina. So my first ethnography in Argentina was a revealing experience. It deals on the nexus of relations and representations shaping Haitian migration and the practice of street vending in downtown Cordoba. So multiple and complementary strategies were in this context mobilized by Haitian migrants to overcome the many challenges they encountered in the racialized Argentine society. So this picture shows, for instance, a parade during the 200th anniversary of the Argentine independence, performing also the diversity of what is contemporary Argentina today. So those guys were all street vendors, but also students and community organizers. One of them lives currently in Florida, another one lives in Quebec, while the last one is still vending in the streets of Cordoba. So a few geographical aspects. So with 1.6 million inhabitants, Cordoba is the second largest city in Argentina. So we can see that for those who are maybe not familiar with the context of Argentina, it's located in the central northern part of the country over there. So there's the region and the city of Cordoba. So Haitians are highly racialized in Argentina, which is often depicted by migrants as a racist country. So this representation is actually rooted in the 19th century massacres of the Argentine indigenous and slave populations, as well as the current invisibilization and discriminations of descendants of these. So the mostly Black Haitian population was this way hyper visible in the Argentine white and brown phenotypical landscape. So refugees from the Haitian dualist dictatorship, but also students, compose the first and more privileged migration flows to Argentina. Later on, and starting in 2012, we had also less privileged migrants who began arriving after the devastation caused by the 2010 earthquake. So the second map that you can see on the right has been designed by colleagues from the National University of Cordoba, showing some examples of life journeys that Haitians, but also other African American migrants were undertaking in the city in 2015. So Haitians were highly active in diverse settings, ranging from graduate studies to community organization, radio streaming, and street vending. So this presentation focused on the commercial area of downtown Cordoba and the neighborhood of Alberdi, which is located in the northwest part of the city. So it's a fascinating neighborhood where I've been living also, hosting a very diverse and active network of community organizations. So this was my very first ethnography, a sort of rite of passage. So I conducted fieldwork in these settings during approximately 1 year and a half, spending a lot of time with Haitian street vendors at their work, engaging conversation also with Senegalese vendors who were present in the setting, as well as sharing Haitians, homes, and social gatherings. So having been also in Haiti in the past helped me to gain confidence and learn basic words of Haitian Creole. So fieldwork was also happening at local community organizations who were active in the neighborhood and Alberti. Radio streaming appeared also as a key site for participatory observation. So being part of Argentine's daily habits, mate took also an important role in the interactions. So I was unable to bring my own mate, reflecting on his role in the field, as it was actively participating in the interaction. So friends actually made this funny sign for me when evaluating, and I still drink a lot of mate. Street vending. So my ethnography looked at the relations operating between Haitian street vendors, city hall inspectors, and the police, who were all oscillating between tolerance and criminalization. So on the streets of downtown Cordoba, Haitians were vending on specific street corners, along with Senegalese, Argentine, Peruvian, and Bolivian street vendors. So Haitian vendors were competing with each other as with other vendors, for instance, the Senegalese ones, because they were offering the same products and logistics of vending, while undertaking also similar migration journeys from Ecuador this time. And finally, they were similarly racialized, being the new Black immigrants in the country. But they are nevertheless very different forms of organization. So Senegalese relied on their Sufi Muslim religious network ruled by duties and rights toward the community, while Haitians had a more individual sense of entrepreneurship, but were relying on each other and further vendors in cases of crackdowns. So this drawing that was made this time by my ex reveals the way the look of the street vendors in these social protection strategies of the watch, always being aware of a potential crackdown, and relying to each other. So being Afro-Latino Americans with knowledge of Spanish, Haitians were successful in finding support in Alberti's community organization network. But this was not the case of Senegalese migrants. So the neighborhood has a long trajectory of trade unionism, indigenous claims, and the Nestor's Kirchner's Patria Grande narrative of a pan-Latin American inclusion, giving therefore niche openings for Haitian migrant empowerment. And the network Haitian migrants developed in Cordoba this way intersected with indigenous and Afro-descendant struggles. So we had the Institute of Aboriginal Culture, a liberation theology-inspired tertiary institute that was helping Haitians to get study scholarships and to secure their legal residency in the country. It also gave the ground for creating the Institute of Afro-American Presence, so the Instituto de Presencia Afroamericana, where Haitians took an active role. So these two institutes are also located next to the church that the founder of ICA, Instituto de Culturas Aborígenes, was holding. And a few blocks away, there was the Radio FM Comunitaria, set by the pastor sisters, which was also giving room for Haitian cultural activities through the program Memoria de America. So there, Haitians could build awareness about Afro-American presence in the district, together with the Aboriginal migration and anti-racist struggles they were engaged. Being also a popular Argentine district, the soccer stadium of Alberti had also a cultural and social outreach. So they were organizing games, but also giving free lessons of Spanish for Haitians and Afro-Americans living in the neighborhood. So Alberti was then offering a friendly space for Haitians to live and benefit from the support of local organizations, enhancing therefore community organization within. So facing regular crackdowns at the end of 2016, one desire of the street vendors was to build a union. It was also a time of neoliberal Mauricio Macri presidency, so leading to rising criminalization of migrants' presence. There was a new visa regime implemented for Haitians, jeopardizing the human rights narrative displayed by the previous government. So I completed my ethnography in these changing times, but I have some more recent observation I would be happy to share later on through discussions if you're interested. This was the Argentine experience, and let's move now to the Spanish one. So, in Spain, I realized that Haitian street vendors' aspiration for union organization had already been implemented in the city of Barcelona by Senegalese migrants. So Senegalese migration represents actually the major sub-Saharan African migration in Spain. And with 1.6 million of inhabitants, Barcelona is the second largest city in Spain and the capital of Catalonia's autonomous community. There, and with the support of local community organizations active in the intercultural neighborhood of El Raval, Senegalese street vendors built their own collective, the Street Vendors Popular Union of Barcelona, El Sindicato Popular de Vendedores Ambulantes de Barcelona. So it's a bottom-up organization fighting for street vendors' dignity in the context of multifaceted discrimination. So one interesting feature is that they united around class and working with rather than nationality or ethnicity. So in this time we had Morsia. So death of Morsia. Morsia was a Senegalese street vendor. So Morsia was presented on the right side of this flyer. So Morsia died after a police crackdown at his home in the touristy town of Salou, close to Barcelona. So his death was actually the driver for the aforementioned syndicate's creation. This collective was also successful in including anti-capitalist, anti-racist, and decolonial narratives in its political agenda, while also mobilizing original artistic expressions such as rap music and clothing design. So this is why I also shifted from my initial interest in Latin America to analyze Senegalese migration, political participation, and social protection in Europe. So this was the topic of my master thesis. So we can see also on this flyer the figure of Mambai on the left. So Mambai was another Senegalese street vendor. He died after being chased by the police to the streets of Madrid. And together with the death of Morsia on the right, they both acted as powerful but contested narratives between family members, community organizations, local and consular authorities, engaging all but to conflict to fund the repatriation of their remains to Senegal. The history of Lucrecia Perez on the middle is a bit different, and she was from Dominican origin. So, my PhD thesis looked on transnational and polysemy interpretation that are given to Senegalese migrants left in Europe. So the main argument of the thesis is that different actors mobilize at different scales for and through this migration context. So that is it to grant, to control and access the social, economic, political, and moral resources necessary to manage the repatriation of mortal remains and the management of survivors' pensions. So the fieldwork in Spain was divided into two different research steps. So the first one was my master thesis, dealing on the case of Barcelona, and then my PhD, which expanded to the west of Spain, as you can see in here, but also to Belgium and to Senegal in the transnational perspective. It was part of the project Migration, Transnationalism, and Social Protection in Europe. And the map that I designed in French, sorry about that, gives a glance on this transnational space and networks I've been navigating through. So I will focus now only on the Spanish part of the fieldwork. So street vendor syndicates developed not only in Barcelona, you can see in here, but also in Madrid and different Spanish cities. I was able to follow mobilization around street vendor death, engaging with diverse actors, so the spokespersons of these syndicates, community organizations, but also artists, family members of deceased, and Senegalese consular authorities. So let's pay attention about the role of arts in this, because the street vendors union in Barcelona was really successful in empowering through the arts. So it mobilized rap music, street theater, cooking, and more importantly, clothing design to reach large audiences and support beyond the Barcelona and Spanish context. So in particular, the creation of the Top Manta cooperative trademark is the core expression of this. So through design, tailoring, and serigraphy, the syndicate offers in Barcelona, in Madrid, but also online, clothes carrying its narratives and headlines. So, as we can see in here on the right, one designs gives tribute to Mumbai with the fighting symbol he's characterized. Top Manta empowers street vendors from the stigmas they are targeted. Their logo, we can see in here, symbolizes the wave, the boat people, and the blanket they use in street vending. So this is a little advertising moment I want to share with you an interesting video that I made. So let's see if it works or not. I hope so. All right. Yes, sorry about that. So one thing interesting also, coming back to the issue of death and the mobilization of figures of some street vendors, death as emblems, that there is no consensus about the mobilization of these narratives by the syndicates, so the unions, the community organizations, and the authorities, and those on the other side who lost a death individual, the family members. Maybe I can try to come to the PowerPoint. There we go. So, no consensus about mobilization of street vendors' deaths as emblems among the different actors involved. So here we can see, for instance, the quest of the family of Morcia for accountability and justice. And in this setting, it was a press conference in Tarragona, Catalonia. The brother of the deceased denounced how, after being supported by all, he remained alone at the court. But with the Black Lives Matter movement seeking for support, he nevertheless reframed the death of his brother through the transatlantic framework. We can see also that local and consular authorities were also engaged through discretionary power, seeking to adjust their legitimacy when riots happened in Salau and Madrid. But Senegalese consular authorities were banned with conviction by the anger of Senegalese migrants protesting in this context. Then the moral economy of the relations, so the role of values, norms, and emotions shaping the exchanges was not only clear in the case of those street vendors' deaths in Spain, but also in the case of further deaths I've been following my PhD in Belgium and Spain, in Senegal. So death in the context of migration, especially when it's caused under violent conditions, disturbs and pushes the living to mobilize, to repair the absence, and build community ties. What I call a very bad death is a liminal situation that crystallizes engagement for social protection. It's more about the consequence of the death than its causes. So death generates conflicts among the living about its management and the social, economic, and political lives that are attributed. So this was the Spanish experience, and I will move now to the last American experience. Okay, so my current project that started in January, so it's a short research program, deals with the regulation of street vending in Los Angeles County. So this picture was taken a few weeks ago after a hearing that was organized at the board of LA County supervisors. So there we had empowered street vendors and community organizations that were advocating and testifying in front of the executive government of the county for the enhancement of street vendors' rights. So vendors were insisting on their mostly elderly position and the way that street vending was a means for surviving as they were lacking access to a pension. So analyzing migrant street vendors, community organization, and multi-level governance interaction in LA County, this work in progress, so we looked at the changing regulations, the variable distribution, and material implication. Accessing the permits, a challenge. So basically, the permits needed for legal sidewalk vending depend on the type of products and where they are sold. So this can bring into many differences. So the first picture on the left is an example of the street vendors permits issued by the city of Los Angeles after obtaining a series of required documents. So the access to this first permit is relatively easy, according to research participants, even for non-documented migrants. Nevertheless, vendors always need to be aware of this and navigate into complex administration codes as well as language barriers. So community organization in this case play a key role in brokering access to it. Sorry. So the second type of permit we can see on the right, which is displayed on this emblematic food card. You can see it in here. It's much more difficult to access. So we're speaking about food vendors who need supplementary permits that are issued by the California Department of Public Health, who require also revision of that card. So these permits are generally expensive, very exigent, and hardly accessible, especially for tacos vendors. So let's take a step backward and have a quick overview of the last 15 years struggles and street vending regulations in LA and California to understand this. So thanks also to the great work that former UCLA colleagues, such as Rocio Rosales, Leif Ana Hidalgo, and Emil Estrada have done about street vending in LA. Several of you are probably familiar with this context, but my interest is that both laws and community organization significantly evolved during these intense social and political movement years. So in consequence of the 2008 unfavorable times for street vending, the LA street vendor campaign led to implementation of two major policy changes in California. So we had SB 946, decriminalizing street vending, and SB 972, revising the food retail code. So in this framework, cities have to issue their own street vending ordinance. So the LA city set an early program, but some cities like Fontana or Anaheim are still resisting today. 2024 shows a sensitization campaign to LA County's recent program and the new ordinance ruling non-incorporated area. So LA Street Vending campaign has been also recently advocating for other issues such as lifting no-vending zones that were operating in LA City, for instance in Hollywood. And there is currently a lawsuit between the city and vendors who have received tickets in these areas. So we can say that organizations are also still advocating for permits cost reduction and further aspects of the unfinished business of legalizing street vending. So why this? This context helps to understand the implication of different collectives in continuous negotiation with a multi-level governance. So the community power collective, we can see in here together with the other organizations that are part of the campaign. So the CPC is since 2020 a new and significant player in the campaign, being highly active around especially the LA County new regulations. So it's the actor I've been focusing on together with Inclusive Action for the city, as we can see in here, both having their offices in Ball Heights where all the street vending campaign started. So following the organizations. It works. Well, I'm having a great access to this community organization, like in the field, in particular the Community Power Collective and Inclusive Action to the City. And I was lucky to enable to follow, especially Community Power Collective in the many events and meetings around LA County, but also online. So in these settings, particular observation was the central technique for data collection. So I could just jump into their agenda and their activities around the county, which was a fascinating access to the field. This map shows LA County, a bit shortened because the northern part was not that relevant for the study. And in blue, we can see all the unincorporated areas of the LA County. So parts of Ball Heights, which is over here, yeah, I'm not wrong. But also East Rancho Dominguez in South LA and Richard Boulevard are the ones who are experiencing the new LA County regulation around street vending. So these were the key areas for fieldwork. So I mean, following especially like those special vending districts and organizations coming from these areas. So following those organizations based in Ball Heights, I also decided to personally live in that neighborhood and experience its lively street vending setting. But I also had secondary sites of particular observation around the cities. So MacArthur Park, for instance, Hollywood Boulevard, Fashion District, and Santa Monica were all areas also where I've been conducting secondary observation. So it's been an intense walking, biking, and public transportation urban experience. So in contrast also with the previous fieldwork setting I've been working in, this one appeared as mainly female, and participants were including many student vendors, spokespersons, civil officers, and community organizations workers. So there are many Mexican, Guatemalan, or Salvadoran first or second generation immigrants, and some of them are also American. So I will focus now on the country level negotiation, and we move then to the conclusion of this presentation. So in collaboration with the LA street vending campaign actors, the community power collectives played a significant role in advocacy, empowering street vendors, special vending districts, building partnerships with LA County for outreach sensitization, but also consultative work with LA Network. So in this regard, they endorsed multifaceted missions with different means and timing, but always the same empowering concept. So this picture shows, for instance, a meeting that was held at the Department of Economic Opportunities of LA County during a session where the CPC, so the Community Power Collective, proposed to its funder a training session about outreach missions. So CPC wanted to train DEO, the Department of Economic Opportunities, regarding their own outreach mission. So both are active in this setting, accessing to the vendors and informing them about the new program. So to do so, they used a role play embodying how an organizer would reach street vendor to inform them about the LA County street vending ordinance and some programs such as possibility of getting a fee reduction to the cost of the permits, and a few cards that would be also paid by LA County. So CPC was trying to train the funder, but the meeting was tense, and according to each other timing, administrative duties, and personal commitment to do so, they had different understandings of their missions of outreach. They were nevertheless celebrating their collaboration. This particular meeting is an example, among others, of the current process of negotiating the know-how of regulating street vending through the new ordinance. So doing so, community organizations such as CPC take a consulting role with public authorities while taking also a brokering role towards street vendors, and finally balancing their main objective for street vendors and programs. So this was the American experience, and I'm going to conclude sharing this common different ones between the different vignettes we've seen. So they do offer interesting vignettes about street vending organization, empowerment, and regulation among global North and South countries. So the case of LA County and Barcelona could be the most comparable, as they represent both the second largest cities of the US and Spain, and they are also hosted in regions that stand in cities or regions that stand in a so-called sanctuary, migration sanctuaries, and finally they both share a border with a global South country. So one unanswered question I'm having is why different case studies, including Córdoba, showing similar strategies for street vendor empowerment. So for instance, the use of arts, the enlargement of frames and repertoires of actions, and supports of local community organization do show very different results in social movement success and policy change. So in the case of Córdoba, no social movements around street vending really emerged, but in Spanish cities and in LA, we had large street vending social movements, coalitions who did emerge. So in Spain, they gained legitimacy, they could empower street vending union or syndicates and build cooperatives, but they could not change street vending, still criminalizing policy. Then in LA County in California, the street vending campaign led to substantial policy change that I believe could inspire other cities and regions worldwide. So with this presentation, I wanted to highlight that undocumented migrants' right to the city is still an unfinished business, and still the vignettes that have shown testify street vendors, movements promising fights and creativity in claiming and transforming public space for social inclusion. Thank you for your attention, despite the small technical issues, and I'm looking forward to your reactions.
All right, can I moderate from here, Ari? Is that okay? In
Yes.
terms of microphone and all of that stuff? Okay, so questions in the room, and then we'll move to the Zoom.
I don't know whether you've tracked how these street vendors progress. So after a few years, if they are successful, what routes do they take? Do they open multiple street vending posts, or do they move on to something else? And then how, as you showed in one of your slides, 2018 when LA decriminalized street vending, people, I would see people running with their carts all the time, to avoid capture, right? So what do they talk about that that they don't have to run with their stuff, right, from the authorities? And then that slide, I'm sorry, it's too many questions.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, the video in the Nike style format. So I saw a lot of these Senegalese and Gambian street vendors in New York in the 80s and 90s. And a lot of them were, I mean, I'm not putting anything negative here. I just some of them were related to illegal transactions, right? So some of them were running from the authorities. Is there any similarities between the Barcelona sub-Saharan street vendors to the ones I just mentioned?
Okay, thanks so much for this. That's great. So, life and economic trajectory of some of the vendors. It's interesting to see that I've seen different experiences. So, for instance, I was referring to one of the street vendors in Argentina who's still vending in this contest, and I came back recently to Argentina at the end of 2023. He was still there, and despite these unfavorable times, Mauricio Macri increasing criminalization towards Haitian migrants and immigrants. In general, the very high inflation also of the country that pushed a lot of actually students just to move. So he was still vending in the city, but so there were some groups of vendors, for instance, like him, who had also family there. So in his case, he had kids. They did family reunification also to bring his mother from Haiti, who is also vending in the field. So we are all a family vending, sometimes on the street, but sometimes they also own a shop. So sometimes the both settings can be used in a complementary manner. So so here again, the borderline, the grid line between the legal and the illegal would be interesting to think that one can be selling things in some settings through with all the authorization required, and a complementary manner to keep on vending on the streets. So a lot of them left Argentina and moved to Chile first, or to Brazil, and several of them just continued the migration trajectory, trying or reaching the US. So my understanding is that once in the US, Haitian tried to access to Florida mainly. When I was in New York, I've been also observing the presence of Senegalese vendors. A lot are also engaged in deliveries. So, and maybe I could jump to your last question about, yeah, I've seen that in Spain, and it's actually why also mainstream media criminalize street vending or the phenomenon of tormenta. So tormenta. So like originally it was selling like CDs, like copies of pirate CDs, you know, and then they evolved, and now it refers to selling the caps, the belts, shoes, for instance, in unauthorized space, and often acquired through illegal copies. But those copies are also sold in the city of Barcelona, so you can go to the port and you can see also those shops who are selling this. So, but yeah, then I was thinking also if maybe the issue of the type of product sold, you know. So I think that in Spain, especially like in the tourist areas, they respond to this like very popular and cheap demand for fashion goods, I would say. And here there is also some clothing vending, but I haven't seen like the same kind of products sold in the street of LA as one I've seen in Spain. And here there is like this predominance also of food vending that maybe helped also to change the narrative also about something like more familiar, more towards cultural identity of what would be a cosmopolitan LA today. And maybe this helped also the social movement to be successful in policy change. But it's just an hypothesis. And then the last point about the crackdowns. So so there are still crackdowns in LA County. Vendors are especially afraid of the crackdowns of Salubridad. So the department of the enforcement part of the department of public health, more than city officers. But then you had also some non-incorporated areas that normally, so they had also to build a new ordinance. So it was the case like recently, a few months ago, but over all of those last years, I would say, yes, it's been like 6 years. You had also zones where like there was also a kind of there was an absence of regulation, but still sometimes enforcement from actors from different areas. So again, the practice is still difficult also for vendors who are always in the risk of potential enforcement. So again, this unfinished business of explaining regulation, and organizations are doing a great job in trying like to move all of these like parts of the law that are kind of constraining the effective access to the permits, because we have a new a very significant policy change, but then like the material access is still a hard way for vendors. So I see there are also some members of the community organizations online that I really want to thank.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Overland, do you know, are you familiar with similar types of vendor organizations in Italy? And whether they are also engaged in these kind of cultural narratives to educate the host population about the difficulties of migration and what you said to change the kind of narrative.
Thank you for this, Peggy. Actually, in the case of Italy, appeared as interesting during my PhD. Yeah, because there is significant Senegalese migration to Spain, France, and Italy. There is a lot of similarities also in street vending strategies by Senegalese migrants between Italy and Spain. There were also tragic deaths of street vendors in Florence that led to youth mobilization, and again this same dynamic of local authorities trying to repair the death of one of the street vendors. They were assassinated basically, and yeah, they were believed to be racist crimes. So it took it was a big issue in Italy. But I was interested. I've seen also in this case, like the city of Florence, trying to kind of pacify, the potential like urban conflict that such an event could bring, as it was also the case in Salo or in Madrid, the riots that happened. And for instance, the municipality of Florence gave, to the state of Italy also, the Italian citizenship to the widow of the deceased. They built a school in the hometown of the family of the deceased. So again, it's transnational way of being implicated, kind of repairing the absence through this particular violent death that disturbed. So I've just been following this, but not been doing fieldwork in Italy. I've been like taking some narratives with Senegalese who lived in Italy while I was in Senegal. But I think there is a lot of like bridges with the situation in Spain. Yeah. So I hope I responded to your question.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether that, I know there's a great deal of racism against African migrants in both Spain and especially Italy. And I'm wondering how you would compare that to what's going on in Los Angeles, which has a huge population that is of Latin American origin and Mexican, Central American. And although there is overt racism in the US, in this environment, it is, I don't know how prevalent it is in inspiring what they're doing.
So, I don't know. I should dive more to this Italian context, but I was I kind of will try to reconstruct the narratives of. It was interesting, but I was in Dakar, but then it's like we had also like, for instance, the patronati, which are like trade unions with large public and private funding in Italy, who are also attending to traditionally Italian citizens abroad, but also taking care of, for instance, former immigrants who had the right to social protection and who came back to the country. For instance, Senegalese migrants who had contracts in litter industry, for instance, and are living in Senegal with an Italian pension. So there, for instance, I interviewed some workers of this patronati who are offering also like space for consulting, how to access to these Italian benefits. And it was interesting because they had also this trajectory of having been engaged with Italian medias and trade unions through the country, not only like in Florence and in Milano, where there's a high concentration of manifest vending, but also in the cases of Senegalese working in agriculture. So you have a lot of like abuses happening. So I don't know, but then I would say like the local level, I'm not enough. I couldn't say that much about the Italian case because I've not been like diving that much into. But maybe one difference with the Spanish case is that in Spain you have, for instance, in this time at least, for instance, the government of Ada Colau, so it was the city hall. Left-wing government with this kind of, urban social inclusion narrative that I think also helped to build avenue also for the at least changing narrative on what was happening with street vendors in Barcelona. But still, on that time, you had also those Mossos de Escuadra, so the police forces who just did that crackdown, at the house of Morsia, who died afterwards. So again, you can have like change of narrative like at the local level. Some or not policy changes, but still you can have those practices that do not just match with the framework. So, but yeah, the Italian case was also fascinating to me to follow this tragic death that happened in Florence, in particular.
Thank you, Felician. Other questions or comments? There's a comment here by Cassidy Bennett. She writes, no question, but wonderful work, Felician. So interesting to see this information and understand the global context better.
Thank you so much, Cassidy, for joining us today. And congratulations of all the great work you are conducting, and to for being present today and support my work. Thank you.
On that issue of the global context, I was also thinking about sort of the different resources that different immigrant groups bring to the activity of vending, street vending. I was thinking about my own very superficial observations in places like Barcelona, where you have, African migrants selling, the various goods in the, using the blankets, right? But also other immigrant groups that appear to use other routes, right? To access vending, not exactly street vending, perhaps, but I was thinking, of course, about the case of Chinese migrants who are very much present in many contexts, of course, but certainly in Barcelona, in Italy, in recent years, recent decades. And of course, you cannot answer questions about what you did not study. But I don't know if you can offer any sort of reflections on the kinds of resources that are sort of available to different migrant populations that take them into particular sort of routes and spaces and ways of vending. You don't see, I don't remember seeing, Chinese migrants, selling with mantas, but mostly having, shops, right? Selling, shoes and having small restaurants and other things. So I don't know if you can offer.
Okay, maybe just general thoughts based on like big observations I had in Spain. But it's true that, if I'm not wrong, first, like demographically, I think that Chinese immigrants represent the second largest non-EU population, immigrant population in Spain. So it's an important population. One thing interesting also is that what I've seen is that Senegalese migrants actually get the products, the top manta vendors, at shops only on the periphery of Barcelona by Chinese immigrants.
Interesting.
So I've just had a couple of works in that area, so I didn't dive that much in this particular relationship. But again, so we have a very complex chain of importation of goods who are then
connected.
sold like on the streets, and we have different actors on the way, but still also with a kind of segmentation and racialization of the I would say there is segmentation, racial segmentation, I would say, of the products who are sold. So you have different groups that are selling very different things. So, for instance, all of these belts, caps, shoes, goods are sold mainly by Senegalese immigrants. Sometimes you might see also immigrants from the Gambia selling it. You have then more Bengalis or Pakistanis selling alcohol, so the lateros. So this is interesting also because, for instance, in Spain, in Madrid, sorry, the original project of the union was not the street vendors union. It was the Sindicato de Manteros y Lateros. So they wanted to unite also these two different. Yes, it was still street vending, but it was not only top manta. So they wanted also to unite through their struggle to acknowledge the presence also of these Bengalis and Pakistani vendors selling beers basically on the streets of Madrid, where it's hot and it's like people are used to have beers during the evening or at the beach. We can still, I've seen also in some parts in Valencia, for instance, I would say Ecuadorian migrants, Ecuadorian and Peruvian migrants selling also different goods, but these were like just short observations. I wouldn't like dive more into. And finally, I've seen some Chinese women immigrants who are not like vending a product but a service on the beach. So you can see like for instance on the beach of Barcelona massage, for instance. So you have typically like Chinese immigrants who are offering massages on the beach. So all of this very diverse setting of street vending in Spain that I've been so could dive more into what different groups are doing and the interconnections also I think are very interesting.
Thank you. Thank you, Feliciano. We don't have any more questions or comments on the chat, so I think if there are no questions, we're going to close it here. Thank you so much, Feliciano.
Thanks,